Hi, my name is Douglas Baldwin and I recently wrote the cookbook Sous Vide for the Home Cook, and today I'm going to show you how I cook pork spare ribs. The first thing I'm going to do is brine the ribs, and to do that I need to make the brine. So in this bucket I've placed 2 gallons of cold water, and to it I'm going to add enough salt to make a 7% brine. Now that I've finished stirring the water so that all the salt's dissolved, I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of liquid smoke to give the ribs a nice smoky flavor. I chose a 7% brine because an article in the Journal of Meat Science found that for pork, a 7 to 10% salt brine increased the water content of the meat the most. The reason I'm increasing the water content of the meat is that as it cooks, a fair amount of the liquid in the meat is squeezed out by the contracting muscle fibers, and so by adding as much water as I can, then less overall water will be lost. Now that the brine's ready, I need to cut the pork ribs into small enough pieces that they'll fit in my vacuum. Now that I've finished cutting up my pork ribs, I'm going to place them in the brine. I'll brine them in the refrigerator for 24 to 48 hours. This will allow enough time for the salt to diffuse into the meat, which is very important. Welcome back. So I've now brined the pork spare ribs for 1 to 2 days in a 7% salt brine, and now it's time to take them out. As you can see, the pork spare ribs have changed color a bit in the brine. This is completely normal. Now I'm going to sprinkle the ribs with a bit of rub. It's always a good idea to work them in. Because we're sealing the ribs in a vacuum bag, we don't need a lot of rub. Now that I've finished putting the rub on the ribs and put them in their vacuum pouches, it's time to vacuum seal them. Here I'm using a clamp-style vacuum sealer. In addition to clamp-style vacuum sealers, there's also chamber-style vacuum sealers like this one. Chamber-style vacuum sealers work by removing all the air from the chamber, then sealing the bag, and then letting the air back in. This allows for a much stronger vacuum. The only problem with chamber vacuum sealers is that they're much more expensive than clamp-style vacuum sealers. This is because they have to withstand the force of atmosphere, which doesn't seem like a lot until you realize that it's 14 pounds per square inch. But as you can see, both the clamp-style and the chamber-style both remove enough air to allow for efficient heat transfer from the water bath to the meat. As you may be able to see, I've set the water temperature to 175 degrees Fahrenheit, or about 80 degrees Celsius. I've placed the ribs in a rack to make sure that they're well separated when cooking. Cooking sous vide is very important to make sure that all the pouches are completely submerged and that the pouches are not touching each other. Otherwise, it's very likely that the food will not cook evenly. For this recipe, I chose 175 degrees Fahrenheit, or 80 degrees Celsius, and it'll take about 8 to 10 hours for the meat to reach a fall-apart texture, where all the collagen, or at least most of the collagen, has been converted into the much more tender gelatin. You can use a lower temperature, but it increases the time. For every 10 degrees Celsius you drop the temperature, it takes roughly twice as long to reach the same amount of tenderizing from the conversion of collagen into gelatin. So it's been about 8 to 10 hours, and the pork ribs are now done cooking. Be careful when removing the bag. As you can see, the bag's puffed up quite a bit. This is from the water in the bags turning into water vapor, and it's completely normal. This happens whenever the cooking temperature is rather high, as it was here at 175 degrees Fahrenheit, 8 degrees Celsius. If you're cooking at, say, 140 degrees Fahrenheit or 60 degrees Celsius, then there would be almost no water vapor that you could see in the bag. As you can see, the ribs are very moist and tender and are ready to eat with a little bit of barbecue sauce. You can see how nice and tender this meat looks. You can top the ribs with your favorite barbecue sauce and they're ready to eat. For more details about this recipe, please see page 86 of my cookbook, Sous Vide for the Home Cook. If you have any spare ribs left over that you don't plan to eat for that meal, it's best to keep them in the package that you cook them in. This will keep any food pathogens from getting into the bag. To chill them so that they're safe to store in the refrigerator, it's best to place the bag in a bath of water and ice. Place it in your refrigerator. You can store it in the refrigerator for 2 or 3 days, or you can place it in your freezer for as long as you want.